So good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the August 10th, 2021 meeting of the Calvert County Board of Commissioners. At this time, I'd like to ask Pastor Steve Forster to give us an invocation, please.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Would you join me in a word of prayer? Heavenly Father, we pause at this moment to give you thanks for this day that you have given us, another day and an opportunity to serve you and to serve this community. Father, I pray for each and every one of the decision makers here that you would grant them the wisdom that can come from you. May they serve with the diligence and serve with the heart that you showed through the Son, Jesus Christ. Bless them in all ways and in all things. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So thank you, Pastor Forster. Pastor Forster is with Life Church of Calvert. We're glad to have you here today. Next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections?
Mr. President, I move that we approve and adopt the agenda with the transfer of consent item number 2 to new business.
Second?
I have a motion and a second that we adopt the agenda with inclusion of the transfer of consent item number 2 to new business. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next item on the agenda is public service announcement. And before we get to Dr. Polsky, since our last meeting, unfortunately, we lost Gerald Donovan. Mr. Donovan, for those of you that don't know, was a lifelong resident of Chesapeake Beach, owned the Rod and Reel Resort, was mayor for 25 or 30 years, I believe. Gave a lot to that community, made some marks that are going to live on through history. It's going to be a great loss for our community and our county. So we want to pass along our condolences to the Donovan family and send them our prayers. So with that, Dr. Polsky. Unfortunately, we have to have Dr. Polsky back. No disrespect to Dr. Polsky, but there's some things going on, and we're back to our weekly updates.
No one wishes I didn't have to be here more than me. No disrespect to any of you. Clicker is not.
It's got COVID.
There it goes. It's got-
It's in quarantine.
Batteries work.
All right. So when we last left each other, which was a few weeks ago, our case count was down. Then it jumped dramatically 2 weeks ago. Actually, the cases tripled in 1 week. Went from 34 cases up to 101. Keep in mind that we count cases from Thursday to the following Wednesday, so we avoid any reporting problems over the weekend. So the data up there is through this previous Wednesday. We'll get new stats in 2 days. There was a slight decline last week, but don't get too excited because over the past week, there's been a 55% increase in cases across the state of Maryland. And I looked at our still forming numbers for the week right now. It looks like we're on pace probably for 120 cases or maybe a little bit more this week. When you take a look at the numbers of positives, negatives, you see that the testing is going up a little bit each week, and the positives, again, that big jump the last full week of July, and then a little bit of a decrease down this previous week. When you look at age ranges, the 15 to 19-year-olds continue to be our biggest concern. Right now, the last 2 weeks, the positivity rates, that's the percentage of positive cases per every 100 tests done, and the threshold for worrisome is 5%. The positivity rate in 15 to 19-year-olds over the last 2 weeks has been 13%. And the concerns both in keeping kids in school, and that goes both in high schools and in our local community college. A little bit of good news, we have seen the number of students over this past week, high school students getting vaccinated double from the week prior. So we're hoping that trend will continue. When you look at statewide numbers, the last time that I pulled up slides, I'm do these from scratch every week. I kind of plug in new numbers. I either had the numbers from late June or early July. There were 519 cases. I only had to change one number. Unfortunately, it was inserting an entire new number in. So we've had a statewide a 10-fold increase in cases since late June, early July. I put these numbers together yesterday. So current hospitalizations across the state were 400 yesterday. This morning it's up to 424. It's a 6% increase in one day. And keeping in mind that from the time someone gets infected, it's generally about another 10 days to sometimes 2 weeks before they end up in the hospital. And if they're going to die, another week after that. So the expectation, unfortunately, is that hospitalizations and deaths will continue to increase. Hard to say how much, but will increase over this coming month. Also, I'm sorry, I meant to mention that locally, to the best of my knowledge from the sources I get, there are 6 Calvert County residents currently hospitalized, 3 in intensive care units, 2 locally, 1 outside of Calvert, and 3 people on regular med-surg wards or hospital wards. As you can see from the numbers, about 20% of people across the state who are hospitalized right now are in intensive care units.
Do you know the age of those individuals?
There is one person in their 70s. The others are not seniors. They are younger. And I will say all of them are unvaccinated. Like not one, like completely unvaccinated. I'm not sure that, at least since Delta has really come on the scene, that we've had any vaccinated Calvert County residents, to the best of my knowledge, that have been hospitalized. So turning to Delta, much as I went over last time, keeping in mind that we know that the variant is much more contagious than previous strains of COVID that we've seen. Onset of illness is much quicker than with the previous strains. And that one dose, if someone just got one dose of Pfizer Moderna, which we still have about 4,200 people in Calvert County who've only gotten one dose and are more than 28 days later and have not gone back for their second, that those people have very limited protection. They really should get their second dose, even if it's been 3 or 4 months ago from their first dose. All they need is the one second dose. They don't need to start all over.
Doc, I thought they had to do that in a time frame. I thought initially, wasn't there this big push that it had to be in a certain time frame?
Well, it's certainly ideal, because if I get my first dose and then I get my second dose 3 or 4 weeks later, I have full protection at that point. If I wait 2, 3, 4 months, I'm going relatively unprotected for 2, 3, 4 months. If I happen to get exposed to COVID during that time, I'm much more susceptible to getting very sick. So there's no purpose to waiting, but if you wait 3 or 4 months, the boost in immunity is just as good as if you had gotten the second dose 3 or 4 weeks later as opposed to 3 or 4 months later. And these numbers have changed slightly since last time we talked, but not a whole lot. That there's still 26,000 Calvert residents who are eligible for vaccination who remain completely unvaccinated. And then we have 13,000 children under age 12 who can't be vaccinated. So we still have roughly 40,000 completely unvaccinated people in Calvert County, with the additional 4,000 who are partially vaccinated.
That's what, almost about 50%?
Close. So 55% of our county is fully vaccinated. And I probably should have included a separate slide on breakthrough cases. So I just want to mention that on our health department website, which is calverthealth.org, or on our Facebook page or Twitter, I wrote up as brief as I could. It's a little bit longer than my usual post, but I wrote up an explanation for why we're seeing more breakthrough cases with Delta. I think it's hopefully pretty readable for people and may give them a much better understanding of where we stand and why, even though we're seeing some breakthroughs, the vaccine still is, for the most part, really accomplishing the goals we want, which is to minimize any serious illness and still significantly decrease the risk of infection. So what we're seeing since Delta really started up, that's when we started looking at breakthrough cases. And what we've seen is that for people who are vaccinated, they're 5 times less likely to get infected than people who are unvaccinated. And then, again, we have not seen to this point any hospitalizations. We know it can occur, but the risk of being hospitalized if that person should get COVID is much, much lower, almost negligible compared to the unvaccinated people. And then this slide just shows, because we were very stagnant for a while with vaccinations. We'd seen dropping and then just kind of plateauing. And this slide reads in ascending fashion. So 4 weeks ago, there were about 530 people in Calvert who received their first dose, their first vaccine. And we've seen a slight and gradual increase. So this past week, 872. We're hoping and we know that, again, a disproportionate percentage of those are high school and to some degree middle school students. So we're hoping to see that continue to accelerate as we go through the next week or two. As far as our general rankings, so the top half of the slide is unchanged from before. We're still second highest out of the 24 jurisdictions in the state as far as vaccinations for seniors. About, I think it's 92.7% have received at least a first dose. Close to 90% have been fully vaccinated. We're still seventh among adolescents, teens, and 11th, which puts us actually below the median. So across the state, at least for a first dose, it's 60% of the population. We're about 57.5, with a little bit less than that fully vaccinated.
Doc, have you noticed now, and maybe I'm completely wrong, it seems like, though, that stat that we're at unvaccinated kind of reflects what the country is.
Well, in some respects, across the country, it's worse, but like in Maryland, you're seeing, significant differences in different parts of the country. So you have Vermont, where over 80% of the population, eligible population, are fully vaccinated. That includes 12 and up, not just adults. And then, we've seen what's happening in a lot of southern states where vaccination rates are sitting around 30%. And so I don't want to call out certain counties, but there are a few counties on the sort of the edges of Maryland where vaccination rates are sitting in the 30-some percent. And then you have Montgomery and Howard County where you're sitting at 80% for their county.
Well,
So,
I think, it's been made a political issue, which it should have never have been. And let's be honest, the mistrust in government is valid, right? Government's never been wrong, or government's never been deceptive. So I think, when you see a lot of these numbers, it's people going, I don't trust government, and it's come away from a medical issue because politicians have made this a political issue. You can't find one to get on TV that doesn't talk about COVID. When, what does a guy who say he was whatever walk of life and he wins an elected office, what does he know about medicine? I mean, to be quite honest, that's not what they do. It's not a dig at them. It's not what they do. But, when I see these numbers and you talk about, and then demographics you talk about red and blue states. And it's been made political, and it ought to, if somebody doesn't know something, they ought to just say, hey, you know what, we just don't know. But this is what we think. This is what research has told us. What are we, a year and a half into this thing? Let's be honest. What can you really know in a year and a half that we knew about? How many years have we had polio vaccines on the books? 60, 70, whatever it has been? We actually have a lot more information about that than we do this. And so, and obviously this is, not what you do, but, we've put all this focus into this. It ought to be getting the trust back from people that we're big enough to say if we don't know something, to just say we just don't know.
so I couldn't agree more that health should never be politicized.
Should never be.
Not naive enough to think that it isn't and won't continue to be.
Well, we're of
But-
the same age. You remember AIDS. AIDS was a political issue back then. They were not testing the blood supply. How arrogant could it be at the time not to test the blood supply? But politics got in the way. There was scientists saying you have to test the blood supply.
And
So,
I would just mention two things. One, as the head of our county's health department, I feel it is an extraordinarily important responsibility of mine and my staff to make sure that people have access to the best scientific evidence out there. That we don't care anybody's politics. We are, as far as I'm concerned, I have a physician responsibility that every resident and everyone who works in this county. And so when we do post things on our website, it is the best, most current information that we can provide. And I can't stop people from making whatever comments on Facebook.
Well,
but
it's
people-
when they turn on network news.
People
And
should
they
be
watch, they
assured.
watch the debates back and forth. I mean, it has turned into such a political issue, and it really shouldn't be. I mean, politicians really should not be in the middle of it, but, I mean, you see everyone cannot pass up a microphone without grabbing that, and I think when you see that, I think that's the root of most non-vaccinated is a mistrust of government.
Well, and then to the second point is that over and over, because I can't force anyone to trust me, I can't force anyone to trust our health department or government writ large. So over and over, I encourage people, if they have concerns, they have questions, to speak to their physician, their nurse practitioner. That I'm going to do the best I can to inform them, but I don't know all the specifics about their particular health. And for most people, I don't have a personal trust relationship with them, that I'm not expecting everyone to trust everything I say. It would be nice, but I don't expect that. So, but it concerns me as a physician that people are denying themselves what could be literally life-saving treatment by listening too much to what shows up on the web, shows up on cable news. And they owe it to themselves, they owe it to their families to make sure that they're basing their decisions on the best information they can for their health. And that really comes from their personal healthcare provider. I do have to point out that I forgot to change the stats on the bottom of the slide, so those are from previous. If they don't match up exactly with another slide, the stuff at the bottom half is a little bit outdated, although it's not all that much. And then I just put up, in case anyone who is viewing at home or for the benefit of, for our elected officials, that the current numbers as of yesterday for 12 to 17-year-old vaccinations, as I mentioned, we were 7th highest in the state, for 18 and over, and then for 65 plus.
So in the future,
Yeah.
for that chart, can you kind of highlight Calvert across the graph? Because you start reading across, it
Yeah,
starts to.
I can try. The problem with this is a PDF that the state gives out, and so I can't manipulate.
Oh, well, then
the
that's
way-
all you got to say. It was a low bid.
I will see. I'll see if I can figure out a way to, kind of play with things a little bit. Sometimes I can overlay things, but yeah, there's a limit.
Even
But-
if you put them out of
well,
order, if you can, and put
yeah.
Calvert first.
Maybe
that would
what
at
I'll do is I'll try to get a box around, rectangle around there, and then
Yeah.
decrease the transparency enough that maybe you can see through it.
Yeah, when you start following across, you kind of start
Yeah, I hear you.
doing that.
Okay.
wigwag.
Yeah, I will do my best.
All right.
And then, and so Commissioner Hart, to your point, at the very bottom, call your nurse practitioner or doctor.
And I think
to
that's
arrange-
great stuff because people should go to their doctor. Turn off TV and talk to their doctor.
Yeah.
And the doctor may say, hey, in my opinion, knowing your medical history, being your doctor, look, this is good for you, it's bad for you, whatever it is. But that's the advice that should be taken. Mike Hart telling somebody to do something is a joke, okay? Because what do I know about medicine?
Even
You
Chris
know.
is laughing at that.
I mean, it's the truth, though. What politician knows anything about medicine, about fixing a road, about it? You win a popularity contest, and all of a sudden it's this godlike syndrome, and you turn. I can't even watch TV anymore. You're trying to watch a regular show, could be watching a tennis match, and some politician pops on. I'm fighting for your rights. And this, oh man, shut up. I mean, it's gone so ridiculous. The credibility of the profession has got to be at an all-time low. So, sorry.
Any other questions?
Doctor, I do have a couple. If a person has been previously infected with COVID, they came out the backside, everything is great, they have the ability of having antibodies, I understand, correct?
Correct.
Natural antibodies. Is there a way that those can effectively be tested to determine if they have that quote-unquote natural immunity without the vaccine? And if so, how's that done?
So if people read the latest posts that I put on our website and on social media, so one of the things that addresses is that particular issue. What we've seen, because Delta is different enough from the previous strains, that our natural immunity doesn't always recognize it well enough. And the other is that the level, so everyone produces antibodies unless your immune system has certain rare problems. But otherwise, everyone produces antibodies in response to an infection. Those natural antibodies will diminish over time. They diminish more quickly over time than when people develop antibodies in response to vaccination. So the amount of protection and the duration of that protection is not as good. What studies have clearly shown is that when people get vaccinated after their infection, that their circulating antibody levels will jump up 5 to 10-fold. So just an enormous increase, and they will have longer sustain. So with this variant, and we have better studies out of the UK because the Delta variant arrived there and really took hold about 2 months before the US. It did clearly see an increase in the number of people who had been previously infected with what they used to call the UK strain or the Alpha strain, and then got sick again with the Delta in ways that they weren't seeing with the previous variants. So the short answer is it's still very worthwhile to get vaccinated because you just don't know for any one individual how well those antibodies are going to sustain. And what you can measure is not going to quantify that well enough to tell you how protected you are.
All right. And one other question, and going back to the testing, if a person does have either the vaccine or they've been infected before, whatever, and the antibodies kill this is something I heard the other day, and I just wanted to get your professional opinion on it. If they go in to have a test done and the test picks up dead virus cells that have already been killed by the body, is that possible that can show up as a positive test?
So we're talking
And that
two
did
different
not come from YouTube University, by the way.
So wait a minute, we're,
YouTube
so we're-
University.
I just want to
That's pretty
clarify, so we're
good.
talking two different things. So now you're not talking about antibodies, you're talking about if somebody gets tested for COVID?
Yes, sir.
So if somebody gets a PCR test, the PCR test looks for fragments of the genetic material of the virus. As long as there's any genetic material remaining in the body, then it will still show a positive. So we've known from back, March of last year, that some people will continue to test positive by PCR for weeks, maybe a month or two after their infection is over. But that's not anything that's sort of new news.
So it will pick up dead virus as a positive test is,
Yeah, so it's actually the genetic material, it's not the whole virus, but yeah, so if let's say that I got infected today, and then I got tested 4 or 5 days from now, I'll test positive, and then if I get tested 2 weeks from now, there's a chance I'll test negative because all of those remnants may have cleared, or I may continue to test positive, and I may test positive a bit later. So there's no way to completely distinguish. You won't still test positive, say, 6 months down the road.
Gotcha.
But, up to about a month, it's still a possibility.
thank you.
So, Dr. Polsky, in one of our conversations recently, I just want to make sure I thought I heard what I heard. We talked about cleaning services. And I did hear it again on TV the other night that this Delta strain surfaces really don't impact transmission. It's all about aerosol, contact. So, because there was a story on TV the other day, people said, don't fill your car with gas because, the gas pump can transfer the virus. And I heard one of the schools talking about, don't worry, we're going to clean every single desk every single day. But I thought in our conversation, cleaning is not as important of an issue today as we thought maybe before, or it's because of the Delta virus
So I
strain?
just want to nuance this just a little bit. You're absolutely right that the vast majority of transmission is respiratory. Either droplets come out, somebody directly breathes them in, or aerosol starts to accumulate. It is possible to pick up COVID from a surface, but generally I would be concerned more about daycare settings where you have little kids who are like, and that material stays kind of moist for a while, and then other kids are like all over the place, and you're putting your hands to your face all the time. In those kind of situations, yeah, there's definitely potential to pick up the virus. Most situations that we're going to deal with on a day-to-day That's going to be a low potential. But there are other viruses certainly that can make us sick that tend to last longer on surfaces, and we're more likely to get infected. So I think it's still good, just general health measures to be mindful, but not to be obsessive.
Make sure you wash your hands, but as far as cleaning surfaces, we don't have to
Well,
steam this room today when we're done.
so when I see patients on the hard surfaces on the chairs, I'll have a little antiseptic wipe, and afterwards I'll just do a quick wipe. I don't, the whole room, just the chair handles, and that's it.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we're good.
That's a great.
Thank you.
Great, all right, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Have a good day. So I am a little remiss in my earlier announcements. August is National Black Business Month. So in Calvert County, we want to recognize the black businesses that we have, a lot of long-term family businesses, great companies, and we need to do a proclamation. And I will say that on camera. So next meeting, we'll try to correct that situation. All right. Next item on the agenda is proclamations. Commissioner Gadway.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do we have a microphone for that?
Yes, she does for you.
Yesterday evening, and as I was reading through some of the notes, I saw the proclamation here, and I was very surprised to know that Calvert County had a direct tie to as much as it did during the D-Day landings. Is there anyone in the room today for this proclamation?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Is anybody calling in? Ah,
Yes, I am. Can you all hear me?
yes.
Yes, sir.
And we see you.
Yes. Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
I'm Harry Wedower. I'm the chairman of your Heritage Committee. And just a little background on the proclamation. We started a pilot program this past spring in conjunction with the Norman American Cemetery, which is managed by the American Battle Monuments Commission, to provide a virtual tour of the D-Day landing site to Calvert County Public School students. And they did a magnificent job. Madame Lemaire and her team there were absolutely terrific in putting together this program on short notice. As many of you all know, Calvert County has a very direct and personal connection with the D-Day landings through the amphibious training base at Solomons, as does Maryland through the 29th Infantry Division. And in fact, Maryland, my understanding, is the most represented state at that site. And it is a place that I wish, and I've often said this, every American could visit, because it really represents, I think, the finest of this country in serving the cause of freedom and rescuing those in need. And the staff at the ABMC told the stories of 3 Marylanders who eventually gave it all in Normandy, and did so in a very personal way for our students. And that is incredibly important, because as you know, that war and its impact fades into memory, and my father's a World War II combat vet, I think it's incredibly important to preserve that history and do so in a hands-on way, which the ABMC has done. So we piloted it this past spring, and the school system did a remarkable job. We hope to expand it this coming school year for our students. And I just can't say enough about the terrific work of Madame Lemaire and her entire team. So it's a proclamation that is truly richly deserved. And thank you all for considering it. Thank Rachel and Ashley and the entire team there for pulling this together.
Well, thank you, sir. About 6 years ago, my wife and I had the opportunity to visit Normandy and the American Cemetery and go out on Pointe du Hoc and try and walk around the very large craters that were left there by the Allied Navy on the bombardment. I agree with the gentleman that it is someplace that more Americans should be able to visit and understand those sacrifices that were made. So this one is a little bit personal to me. Like I said, I didn't know that Calvert had that direct tie, and I've had the opportunity and the blessing to be able to go visit those. With that being said, whereas Calvert County was the site of a naval amphibious training base during World War II, and whereas the Naval Amphibious Training Base played a vital role in preparing service members for the D-Day landings, June 6, 1944, and the beginning of the liberation of Europe from Nazi tyranny. And whereas the Normandy American Cemetery honors more than 10,000 American service members who gave their lives in the defense of freedom, and whereas the Normandy American Cemetery represents an unbreakable bond between the United States and their oldest ally, France. And whereas the staff of the American Battle Monuments Commission, custodians of the Normandy American Cemetery, have undertaken an interpretive program in coordination with Calvert County Public Schools to provide students with an interactive program that tells the story of D-Day and the beginning of the liberation of Europe. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Calvert County that the appreciation of all citizens is hereby extended to Katie Lemaire, Muriel Rambert, Josane Rudd Gillimet, Anthony Falquier, and Scott Desjardins of the American Battle Monuments Commission for the meritorious service to Calvert County that is in keeping with the friendship and alliance of the United States and France, given under our hands of this seal the 10th day of August, 2021. Signed by Commissioners.
Thank you. Do you have something you wanted to add? Nope.
I just want to again thank you very much, gentlemen. This was truly special, and I very much appreciate you and your staff taking time to do this.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
all your efforts.
Thank you.
So, next item on the agenda is an award. Director Schlegel, Ashley.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good
morning.
Ashley Staples Reed, Special Projects Program Manager for County Administrator's Office. I'm here today also as a member of the Employee Recognition Committee to introduce July's Employee of the Month. So here is a quick reminder of what we do look for in Employee of the Month, an award that acknowledges individual excellence for superior job performance or special individual efforts in the areas of effectiveness of public contact, respect of fellow employees, quality and/or quantity of work, contributions towards improving organizational morale, and actions that improve the county's public image. Anyone can nominate a coworker for this award, and we encourage staff to check out the ERC webpage on the county intranet or contact an ERC member for more information. Now it is my privilege to introduce Calvert County's July 2021 Employee of the Month, Hillary Daly, Tourism Program Specialist for the Department of Economic Development. So Hillary Daly was nominated for Employee of the Month for her work assisting the nonprofit community during the COVID-19 pandemic response. When the Economic Development Team realized the potential negative impacts on the nonprofit community, Hillary stepped up and became the Department of Economic Development's main liaison with the nonprofit community. She participated in regular meetings with both the College of Southern Maryland's Nonprofit Institute and the Calvert Chamber of Commerce Nonprofit Alliance. She provided regular updates from county government and assessed the immediate needs of local nonprofits. In addition, she kept both groups up to date on the latest federal, state, and local COVID-19 assistant grant opportunities, as well as the governor's executive orders. Hillary quickly became a trusted resource and helped to strengthen the relationship between the Department of Economic Development and the local nonprofit community. Many nonprofits have reached out to our department to commend Hillary for her efforts. The entire Economic Development Team is grateful that Hillary stepped up and took on this additional responsibility during an extremely busy time for their office. She is a true gem and a fantastic teammate.
Oh, there we go.
Commissioners, I have, Jennifer Merlin's going to join me, and I apologize, I still have not, after 18 months, gotten used to talking underneath of a mask. But, you know, I have the great pleasure of working with a phenomenal team every day, but I will tell you, I just cannot gush enough as a proud mom, as a proud teammate, as a proud, you know, supervisor to this group in many ways, and they really stepped up to the plate. Hillary's just one example of that. We knew pretty early on that this was going to be a really big feat for us to overcome. And, you know, I say it often, we're small, but we're mighty in economic development. And we really were all hands on deck. Hillary volunteered to be the liaison. We didn't have to ask her. She knew that there was a need there, and she volunteered to take that additional duty on. And, you know, Jennifer, another small but mighty department in county government, you know, also became another, I would say, extension of community resources as well to assist Jennifer. So, for example, Hillary would attend a meeting, she would kind of hear what their needs and some of their issues and what had bubbled up on that particular week. She would come back to us, we would work with Jennifer, and usually by that Friday, we would have some sort of resource available to bear to them to allow them to continue and move on. And that partnership, you know, has just been strengthened. You know, definitely with community resources, I kind of think of them as, you know, we're kind of hand in hand and have been over the last couple of months. So Hillary, from our entire team, thank you for everything that you've done and you continue to do. You know, I'm excited that she's able to get back to a little bit more of her tourism duties because I know she missed that terribly during that time, but thank you so much.
You know, Kelly, on that note, you don't know how many times I've been out in the public and they have said, thank you for you guys helping with the grants and all, that we kept a job, that businesses did not go out. I mean, many, many times. I've been in the grocery store, been stopped, and I'm sure you gentlemen are the same. It is so important what you do. It really is. I mean, it's if you've ever been self-employed or worried about your job, and this was out of their control. This wasn't, they didn't want to go to work or, you know, I mean, this was, and you were all they had. So, thank you. And I will tell you, the level of appreciation from them people, you'll have it forever.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. I just want to echo the same sentiments. Nonprofits have to operate just like a business. They have staff, they have a budget, they have goals that they have to meet. And many of them were on the front lines during this pandemic, giving out assistance, diapers, rent, utility assistance. So these grants helped all of the nonprofits. What I will say, just to give you an idea of the scope, in our department, through our grants, and through our different councils, we probably work with about 125, 150 nonprofits on an annual basis. There are over 600 nonprofits though in this area. So Hillary's outreach to the Chamber of Commerce and to College of Southern Maryland allowed us to work with nonprofits we had never worked with before. I want to say a third of our grantees were new nonprofits that we had never, you know, had any kind of interaction with before. So it really meant a lot to us to be able to make that difference, and we could not have done it without her. So thank you, Hillary. We really appreciate you.
Jeffrey, do you want to say anything?
I guess I'd just like to say thank you for the thank you. And I really didn't think that it was that special to be able to do this, but it really was. I just wanted to help out, and the networking and the partnerships that have been formed is just amazing, and I am proud that we have that, and we can continue to have those partnerships as we move forward.
Come on down. So Hillary, we really appreciate all the work you do, and we all know how important tourism is to Calvert County, and the work that you do helps make that an important component here in our community. So we really appreciate, and especially stepping up in this special time to help our businesses and our community was really great. And I have for you a plaque, but they tell me the important part is the little envelope that's attached to the plaque.
Commissioner Nutter always said.
I've heard that before. I don't know what's in that envelope, but don't lose the envelope. If you lose the plaque, we'll replace it. So we're gonna take a picture, gentlemen. Yeah, I want the envelope. Chris wants all the envelope. So according to Commissioner Hart, that envelope might buy you two 2x4s.
Oh, maybe.
So next item on the agenda is appointments. Deputy Administrator Vasallo.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to cover 4 appointments for you this morning. The first one is from the Adult Guardianship Review Board. Staff is requesting a motion to reappoint Kimberly Long, appoint Michelle Trumbo and Atia Jackson. And following these appointments, you'll have 6 vacancies that we're recruiting to fill.
Mr.
So
President?
moved.
Yep. Go ahead, sir. Yeah. Second.
I have a motion and a second that we reappoint Kimberly Long and appoint Michelle Trumbo and Atia Jackson. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
All right, your second appointments today are for the Building Board of Calvert County, and staff is requesting a motion to reappoint Paula Guffrey, and there are no remaining vacancies.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to reappoint Paula Guffrey. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
All right, your third round of appointments is for the Employee Recognition Committee. Staff's requesting a motion to appoint Jay Haynes to fill 1 vacancy, and then you'll have 4 vacancies remaining.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to appoint Jay Haynes to fill a vacancy. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
And your final round is for the Emergency Medical Services Advisory Council. Staff's requesting a motion to reappoint Stephen V. Skelzo, and there are no vacancies remaining.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to reappoint Stephen V. Scalzo.
I was waiting for her. She did it good.
Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next item on the agenda is old business. Director Woodson.
Good morning, Melanie Woodson, Human Resources Director. Dina Davis, Human Resources Deputy Director.
Good morning.
Today, we are here to close out timing of the use of compensatory leave. Background, on Tuesday, July 27th, 2020, the Board of County Commissioners and the Department of Human Resources held a public hearing to amend Chapter 86, Section 3-205 of the Personnel Chapter of the County Code regarding the use of compensatory leave accrued during an extended local state of emergency. There was no public comment. The record is closed. Discussion. The proposed amendment states accrued compensatory leave is related to and during a local state of emergency that is declared by the BOCC and longer than 10 months in duration. Employees must use such leave within 6 months of the end of the local state of emergency, but may not be compensated at separation. A copy of the code amendment is attached with the additions indicated in blue and the deletion indicated in red. The ordinance is also included for your signature. Fiscal impact, none. Conclusion, recommendation. Staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners accept the proposed code amendment and sign the attached ordinance.
Any questions?
Mr. President, I make a motion. to approve the proposed code amendment and adopt it, present it today. That's my motion.
Second?
Have a motion and a second that we approve and adopt the code amendment presented at the public hearing on July 27th, 2021. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is consent. First item under consent is Department of Finance and Budget Award Recommendation ITB 2021-080 Uniform Services Apparel for Career EMS. We removed item 2 to new business. Item 3, Department of Finance and Budget Award Recommendation ITB 2021-079 Fabricate and Install Signage. Item number 4, Department of Finance and Budget Award Recommendation ITB 2021-075 Electronic Material Recycling Services. If there are no objections, these items will be adopted. Thank you. New business. First item under new business, Department of Planning and Zoning, Power Fund.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mary Beth Cook, Director of Planning and Zoning. With me today is Rachel O'Shea, our zoning planner, and also joining us on Teams is Ron Marney, who is now our environmental planning regulator. And Ron is going to read the memo.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Board of County Commissioners established the Purchase and Retirement Fund in 1992 to purchase and retire and permanently remove transferable development rights from the market, thereby protecting additional farmland acres from development. Board of County Commissioners also this year directed staff to establish a TDR bank, now known as the TDR Reserve pilot program, that moving forward will be called the TDR Reserve. This is a county-managed program that will facilitate TDR sales between farmers and developers and act as a revolving fund. There is $2,451,675 in the budget available for the Park Fund purchases and for the TDR Reserve for fiscal year 2022. The funding includes a small portion of agricultural transfer taxes, which are funds dedicated for agricultural preservation totaling around $30. The remaining funds come from previous balances totaling approximately $1,500,000 and contributions from the county's general fund of $921,675. Discussion. The Agricultural Preservation Advisory Board recommends a purchase price of $4,500 per TDR for the fiscal year 2022 PAR cycle and the TDR Reserve. Their recommendation is based on a collaborative effort with the TDR Committee, who originally proposed the TDR Reserve. The price reflects state preservation easement values and Calvert land prices that tend to be higher than neighboring counties in southern Maryland. Based on this, the recommended price is believed to be a fair and equitable number. The general fund contribution of $921,675 shall serve as the budget for the TDR Reserve as previously approved by the Board of County Commissioners. This allocation of general funds for the TDR Reserve is a one-time contribution which is intended to function as seed money for the pilot program. The remaining $1,530,000 would be attributed to the fiscal year 2022 PAR cycle. Fiscal impact, the potential impact is the full budget for fiscal year 2022, which is $2,451,675. Conclusion recommendation from staff is that the Board of County Commissioners set a PAR fund and TDR reserve price, direct staff to offer to purchase TDRs until PAR funding is exhausted, and direct staff to advertise and accept PAR fund and TDR reserve applications.
Any questions?
I actually have one for Commissioner Hance because I trust your guidance on this.
Board.
Well, you've been in touch with this from its inception almost. I mean, so do you believe this is enough to stimulate even more participation in this program?
So you never know till you do an offering. I think last year's offering was 4,000, and the
It was
45.
bumped to 4,000, yeah, initially it
Yes.
was lower, yes.
Yes. So, and the $4,500 was the recommendation of the committee that we put together earlier this year,
Yes,
between the developing community and the agricultural community, and this was the price that they came up with. So there's a little more basis behind this than what we had last time. But we never really know until we make the offering, because you don't know what's in their minds, what the trigger is for them.
Because I'm going to be honest, you know, as I've learned in my journey, 7 years, and I've said it many times, you know, you first win, you don't even know where the bathroom is. You're constantly learning. And so I apologize for a lot of the mistakes I have made during that journey, but you don't want to repeat those mistakes. You know, sometimes a law will go on the books, and you say, you know, a law was put on to protect this and this. But people find a way to exploit part of that law and not understand the intent of that law. And because what I have seen transpired in the last couple years, I don't believe that, now I don't know how to put this, I don't believe that, you know, the growth pattern that we were on pace for has been followed the way that we have intended it to go. And I've always been in the past opposition to you know, very protective of government funds. But I don't see a way to direct growth the way we want it to go and at the pace that we can handle. I mean, we're still working on code from 1983. You know, I mean, you know, with traffic and stuff, and Calvert is a way of life more so than just where you live. That I'm in full support of this PAR program that I have not always been in the past, and we all know that. I mean, I've been public about that. But I have researched everything I can research and try to find. So that's why I'm asking you today, Commissioner. I want to see this be successful because, you know, some of the explanations I have gotten back when I go out in the community and I say, hey, what about this, and this, and I get it is what it is. Well, if that's the answer I'm going to get, then it forces a reaction. And not trying to throw rocks, but I want this to be successful. And we can't handle a 3% or 4%, regardless what some of these experts come out and say. I just don't. We have one road. So if this number isn't successful, I'm for a number that is, I guess.
So I'm going to recuse myself of this. But before I go, this year is going to be a little different in the process. So could you kind of walk through that process so everybody listening clearly understands? Because this is unique, the first time we've ever done this, where there's dedicated TDRs going to the bank, reserve as you call it, and going to the PAR. So can you kind of walk through how that process is going to work when somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to sell my TDRs?
yes. They are going to be given the option whether they want to purchase, have the county purchase and retire those TDRs, which we've done in the past. Doing so takes the density off the books. So that those TDRs, which is density that you transfer from the outlying areas into the receiving areas, is gone, never to be used. Or they can choose to put, we'll purchase as the county the TDRs to put into a bank to be used in those receiving areas. So it's up to them to decide which way they want to go.
Just wanted everybody to be clear about that, and now
Sure.
I'm going to go.
Is there a price difference between those being put into the bank and those being retired?
There is not. So I guess the important thing to note is that typically TDRs that are sold to developers to use in those transfer zones is a free market. We don't set the price for those. So those were being bought and sold. This is a very new program that we're just starting for the first time, and we're setting the price equal to the PAR price to see how it goes. This is our pilot.
And so if I understand the process, if we were to be able to purchase 100 TDRs at the 4,500, we could turn around and put it at market value. If it was in the bank, they could be at market value at $15,000 each to a builder, and he would be able to buy them from us at that price? How does that work?
That, we did not discuss changing. It's gonna be a revolving fund where whatever we purchase them as, we were intending to sell them at the same price.
So, yeah, if you sell to the TDR reserve, it would be that 4,500, and selling out would be the 4,500 to developer, but we are adding a 1% administrative fee for a developer to purchase the TDRs to partly cover staff administration of the program. But I do also want to add, it's two separate pots of money, two separate programs. PAR is going to run and operate as it always has. The application cycle. Nothing's changing for PAR. For the TDR reserve, we're going to operate that on an application cycle, but it's going to be a first come, first serve basis as the funding is there and as the TDR supply is there. And we have separate applications for both programs, whether you're buying or selling. And we will be doing advertisement. We're working with CMR to get that ready. And we will be sending notices out to all APD owners so that they're aware of the new program.
Thank you.
Thank you. So gentlemen, for our purposes now, the conclusion recommendation is to set the PAR fund and TDR reserve price. Number 2, offer to purchase TDRs until PAR funding is exhausted. And 3, direct staff to advertise and accept PAR fund and TDR reserve applications. So I'd entertain a motion.
And I will for discussion. I still have a few more
Sure,
questions. Do you
absolutely.
want me to questions now or during?
We can make the motion.
Okay. Because I'm not locked in on this, but I'll just so for discussion, I'll make a motion to go with staff's recommendation. For the I'm so sorry. To set a PAR price and a TDR price, and to offer to purchase TDRs and PAR funding is exhausted, and to direct staff to advertise and accept PAR fund and TDR reserve applications.
Just one key component. Staff, in coordination with the collaborative efforts of the group, set it at 4,500. Are
Right,
you?
yes, sir. Right.
Okay.
And that I want to talk about in discussion.
Second.
Second. Okay. We have a motion. Please.
So, Mary Beth, do we know the participation last year in PAR?
If Ron could answer that, approximately how many TDRs were sold to the PAR program? General.
Approximately, I don't have the exact number, but it was just over 400 TDRs. The majority of those being when the price was adjusted to the higher number.
And how many outstanding are there?
How many TDRs are available for purchase? I would say somewhere in the 8,000 range, because I had a number I just found from March 2021 where we had around 8,500 minus the 400 so I'd say somewhere around 8,000 TDRs.
My concern is real estate prices are off the chain. And everyone knows it. I mean, in all 50 states, I don't think there's a pocket in this country people are not overpaying for homes. We've seen this before when the bubble, I mean, you see it. It's just, we've seen stuff move that's never moved. My fear is that will put an increase on the demand for more housing. Would go to reason. And I'm not going to speak for the rest of the board. When people see retirement homes, they understand it. When people see some single-family homes, they understand it. I've always said this, we're just not built for mass apartments. And my fear is that we cannot, the infrastructure, we have one road, and that we can't hold that. So I would be willing to look at a price that this committee would feel would stimulate that to get more of these off the board and retire them. I remember when I went to New York, I don't know which time it was, but there's not a lot more important we do than get that bond rating. And I remember the bond rater said, we're looking at how Calvert grows, and we're comfortable with it. We're not built to all of a sudden have a 3% or 4% growth rate. They were very comfortable where we were. And what we're seeing right now is a feeding frenzy. And, back, and Steve's a better historian, back when we were building a school, every year or every other year
In the 90s.
in the 90s, we remember that spurt. We've kind of almost hit the ceiling, and I don't think we can handle that again. So I'm a little hesitant to vote for 4,500 today if we were at 4,000 on the last par price. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it didn't seem like we got a whole lot of participation. So to put this out there, and this is what we're trying to do. I mean, we are trying to get these off the market. I just don't know 4,500 is going to make the needle move.
Well, and I'm comfortable with the 4,500, and I'll tell you why. The collaborative effort between the two groups that came together on this and spoke publicly about the entire revamping of the TDR, well, shall we say reserve now? It was the bank idea before. This is a symbiotic relationship between, growth and the need to preserve property. And this permanently preserves
Because
property.
we're at how many thousand? Our goal was 40,000 acres, correct?
Yes.
And we're at 30.
We're at like 30.
33.
Yes, 33 now. So this takes it off the books entirely. It is also a situation where said developer can negotiate on his own at a lower price. This is just the PAR program piece.
Right.
This is for a set 4,500, and I'm satisfied with that number.
When do we do to review this again?
That's what I was gonna ask. If we've got 2.45 million dedicated to this for FY 2022, when can we come back and review it? 90 days, 6 months, and review
Because
what
obviously
kind
it'll
of,
take a while to get
Right.
these things in motion,
what
but
kind of response we've had to that, and then readjust if need be?
Yeah, so once we have an approved price, we'll go ahead and advertise and let the public know that we can accept applications. We usually give APD owners 60 days to submit their application, and then we'll review. Depending on that participation rate, then if it's super low, we can come back to the board and reevaluate the price at that point.
so like 6 months, something like that?
It
Is that a
less
fair-
than 6 months,
that's
yes. Before the end of the year, we can definitely revisit it if the participation is low. And we can stay in contact with you of that, and we can go from there. But I also want to say to Commissioner Weems's point is that the 4,500 was a recommendation from both the agricultural
Right,
community
and I
and the
respect that.
developer
I
community.
just want to
So-
make sure that we're on target, so.
Well, let me make a proposition. You could amend your motion to be inclusive of the 4,500, and also, if you wish, number 4, we could come back in
Number
4
4.
months.
I
or
have 3.
I know. I'm just in addition.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I
Okay.
was getting ahead. If you wanted to make the additional amendment to follow up 3 months, you said 60 days. So
How about we make it when the period for application closes? Then we'll come back
Okay.
to you with how many we've received.
Okay. So I guess the motion would be to go with staff recommendation for the 4,500.
this is an amendment.
An
to-
amendment, right, amendment to, right.
We're in
Do that
discussion.
Under Robert's rules?
John?
If a motion's been made and seconded, is it possible to make an amendment to it? Or
Yes,
does-
absolutely, and then we'll
Okay.
vote on the amendment first.
Right.
And then the primary motion second.
Okay.
And so the amendment would be that at the end of the application process, we do a reevaluation to see where we are.
So
All those, go
I-
ahead.
I
John.
think that your amendment is that staff return at the close of the application process and advise
Yes,
the
sir.
board. And if there's a second to that amendment,
And I'll second that amendment.
then
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then we'll go back to, Ron, was that an aye? That's an inside joke. Sorry, Ron. So we have a passage of the amendment, and we'll go to the original motion for passage. Yes, sir.
Just for record, that was Commissioner McConkey that.
Oh,
came in
I
with
did
that.
not know. I'm sorry, Commissioner McConkey. I was unaware that you were here. My apologies, sir.
Been here.
Welcome.
But
Very good. We had a, yes, acknowledgement of said motion, John.
So the motion passed 4-0-1 with Commissioner Hance having recused himself and abstained from
Correct.
voting.
Now we're
Thank
back to
you.
the original.
And if I could restate the original motion, it was to set a par price and TDR reserve price at $4,500 per TDR. Number 2, offer to purchase TDRs until par funding is exhausted. And number 3, direct staff to advertise and accept par funds and TDR reserve applications.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right. The motion passes 4-0-1. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Commissioners.
you.
Thank you.
Commissioner President,
How are
after
things?
you, sir. Everything's good,
I
sir.
still have a seat?
You do.
Okay. Just checking.
You do. Yes, sir. Literally and figuratively.
So, Madam Clerk, let the record show that Commissioner McConkey has joined us, please.
Thank you for that.
So, next item on the agenda, item number 2, new business, Department of Parks and Recreation. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Commissioners. I'm Karen Molinas. I'm the Division Chief for Natural Resources within the Parks and Recreation. And I'm here to request a decision on the lease agreement for Hughes Tree Farm, the tenant house. And I'll read the memo. Is the background. Both prior to and after the Hughes Tree Farm was donated to Calvert County, the house on the property has been occupied by various persons, primarily foresters or forest rangers with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, Maryland DNR. The rent is $200 per month, and the tenant performs maintenance and security duties at the tree farm. Discussion. Ryan Galligan, Maryland DNR Forest Ranger, has lived in the house since 2014, but is being transferred to the Forest Service on the Lower Eastern Shore. Bryant Howell has been hired as the new Forest Ranger with an anticipated start date of August 11, 2021. A DNR ranger as a tenant is a great benefit to our management of the property. They provide a presence and deterrence to trespass, and they support the management of the trails and timber on the tree farm. So the fiscal impact is none. The rent payments are deposited into the Hughes Tree Farm Capital Improvement Project to be used for site improvements. Conclusions and recommendations are we recommend that the Board of County Commissioners authorize the board president to sign the lease agreement with the incoming forest ranger at the current rate of $200 per month. Take any questions? Discussion?
Any questions? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we authorize the board president to sign the lease agreement with the incoming forest ranger at the current rate of $200 per month. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Karen.
Next item under new business, Department of Human Resources, adoption of a quarantine policy. Director Woodston.
Good morning, Melanie Woodson, Human Resources Director.
Dina Davis, Human Resources Deputy Director.
We are here today to discuss the adoption of a quarantine policy specific to COVID-19 and its variants. Background: COVID-19, a respiratory disease that spreads easily from person to person and may result in serious illness or death, is a public health catastrophe and has caused a disruption of services in Calvert County. The health office has advised that the Delta variant is more than twice as contagious as the original strain of COVID-19 and multiplies at a much faster rate. Discussion. To preserve the workforce and ability to serve the citizens of Calvert County, staff recommends the adoption of a quarantine and testing policy that is consistent with the best scientific advice and guidelines. Upon consultation with the Calvert County Health Officer in reference to CDC guidelines, staff has developed the enclosed policy for the board's consideration so that predictable, consistent, and repeatable outcomes are attained. The recommended policy applies only to employees of the Board of County Commissioners and distinguishes by and between employees where medically appropriate based upon advice staff has been provided. In summary, the recommended policy provides: 1. Upon testing positive for COVID-19, an unvaccinated employee shall quarantine at home for 10 days from the onset of symptoms and may return to work thereafter if the employee has no fever and COVID-related symptoms have substantially improved. 2. A fully vaccinated employee, if exposed to a person diagnosed with COVID-19, need not quarantine unless and until such employee becomes symptomatic, whereupon such employee shall isolate for 10 days from the onset of symptoms and may return to work thereafter. In the alternative, a symptomatic vaccinated employee may be tested for COVID-19 by rapid antigen or PCR. If the test is negative, the employee may return to work 24 hours after their symptoms resolve. If the test is positive, the employee shall isolate for 10 days from the onset of symptoms before returning to work. 3. An unvaccinated employee, if exposed to a person diagnosed with COVID-19, must quarantine for 10 days from the last date of exposure to the infected person. If such employee develops symptoms, he should be tested for COVID infection. If the test is positive, isolation is reset to 10 days after the onset of symptoms. If an unvaccinated employee remains without symptoms of illness, as an alternative to a 10-day quarantine, he may be tested for COVID-19 by PCR between days 5 through 7 after the last day of exposure to the infected person. If the test is negative, the employee may return to work on the 8th day after exposure as long as he remains without symptoms of illness. If the test is positive, the employee shall isolate for 10 days from the date of the test before returning to work. 4. Interior workspaces where an employee has performed work are deemed clean for the restoration of duties and functions within that workspace 8 hours after the infected employee has left the space. 5. Shared vehicles shall be aired out for 15 minutes when last used by an employee that tested positive for COVID-19 before being used by another employee. 6. Use of sanitation and sterilization supplies are left to the discretion of the department. 7. The county administrator may unilaterally modify this policy upon the advice of the health officer and in accordance with CDC guidelines. Any more restrictive measures put in place by the county administrator must be affirmed at the next meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. Fiscal impact, none. Conclusion recommendation. If appropriate, staff requests that the board adopt the enclosed policy. Otherwise, staff seeks direction in this matter. Any discussion?
Motion to accept. Second.
So, I have a motion and a second to adopt this policy. Any discussion on that motion?
Mel, you think this hits all the bases?
It does hit all the bases, and it follows the CDC guidance. The issue is that the CDC guidance changes. So we will be before you again if something changes. But this is consistent with the CDC, and it's been vetted by Dr. Polsky.
Right, and for those individuals watching, this is just direction for staff. So they
Correct.
know how to react. This does not affect the public in any way. It's just for county employees and for supervisors to know what to do when an employee tests positive. And as Director Woodson has mentioned, it's fluid because as we know, those CDC recommendations change, and we didn't check them this morning, but this was based.
We checked them this morning. It's,
Oh, we
it's
did
still,
check them
it's
this
still
morning.
good.
I should have known. Why did I say that? I should have known. So it's based on the current CDC recommendations, and we're going to follow those recommendations as best we can moving forward. So,
Correct. Thank you.
any other discussion? Commissioner McConkey?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, just want to check.
Thank you.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item under new business would be the consent item number 2 that got moved forward, which is Department of Finance and Budget Award Recommendation. And I see Sharon coming forward. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
I'm Sharon Strand, Acting Director of Finance and Budget. Background of the memo. The purpose of this contract is to provide grounds care mowing services for county right-of-way sites and pond areas for the Division of Highway Maintenance. Sites may be added or deleted as the county may require. The contract is for a one-year period and with the option to renew for 4 additional one-year terms. The previous contract was awarded to Honey Cove Lawn Care LLC on June 5th, 2018. In FY 2020, the county expended $22,890 for this service. The amount varies year to year based on the number of mows and facilities and may exceed $300,000 per year. Discussion. During the weeks of June 6, 2021 and June 13, 2021, advertisements appeared in 2 local newspapers, the eMaryland Marketplace website, and the county's Facebook page soliciting bids for the reference contract. 2 bids were received and opened during a virtual bid opening on July 7, 2021. The bid tabulation from the bid opening and bid comparison showing unit pricing and totals are attached. See attachments B and C respectively. The bids were thoroughly reviewed, and the lowest apparent bidder, D'Angelo Brothers LLC, meets all requirements of the specification. In addition, reference checks provided satisfactory comments. Fiscal impact. Funding for this contract has been allocated in the Highway Maintenance Contracted Services account. Conclusion recommendation. In accordance with Section 6-101 of the Code of Public Laws, it is recommended the Board adopt staff's recommended findings in Attachment A and award the unit price contract to the lowest responsive bidder, D'Angelo Brothers LLC, Hazelton, Pennsylvania.
Questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Gadway?
Thank you. As I mentioned a little earlier, I'm new to this job, and I'm still learning how state laws impact us and local laws dictate some of what we have to do and can do. My reason in questioning this is that this is a bid for a job between roughly $40,000 and $50,000. A local company, local as in 2 to 3 miles away from us, put in a bid approximately 6% over one that was 217 miles away from us. We just came off a buy local week, and I'm sitting here looking at this saying, for a very small amount of money, we're giving a contract to a company that's not only not in the county, but out of the state entirely. And in my humble opinion, we would see that money, that small amount of money, come back in the property taxes, the business property taxes, the equipment taxes, and the money that's spent on the sales taxes within our county based on the people that are employed by that company in our county. If we give that money to the company out of state, that money's gone. The other state gets tax benefits out of it. As I asked the county attorney this morning and the county administrator, I was shocked to find out that our hands are somewhat tied on that. But even in one of the attachments, I looked at it, and it appears to me that on line 20 of attachment C, that one line 20 makes up more than the delta difference between the two bids. And it appears to me that the company that has had the business for the last 4 years probably has a pretty good grasp of what the scope of work is for line 20, where the other company may not, because there's such a massive difference in that line 20 on attachment C. I just wanted to voice my concern on it. I personally can't vote for this because of those concerns. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I understand that there's a whole lot of legislation and law that we have to abide by, but I'm tired of seeing our guys in our county being unemployed or going out of business and seeing trucks coming down with Pennsylvania tags working up and down the side of the highway. That's my 10 cents. Thank you.
Anybody else? Commissioner McConkey?
Yes, I would agree with Commissioner Gadway on this. I believe the money, the difference would definitely be made up by buying local, and as I've said before, also the fact that we require a 3 years of experience really puts a disadvantage to our local businesses, and I've seen many local businesses not be disqualified when they were much cheaper than an out-of-state business. So I would have to agree with Commissioner Gadway on this.
Okay. Any other discussion?
County attorney, so obviously there's a lot of work in the pipeline. If we were to look back at our approach to this, how long would it take before county code could be changed? Because right now we're going by county code. How long would it?
Actually, we're going by public local law, which
Okay.
is what's adopted in Annapolis by the General Assembly and signed into law by the governor. Bids were required by the public local law as the Board of County Commissioners to award it to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder using the 7 criteria that are analyzed.
Right, because I remember we had in legislative request when we were trying to do, what was the
Do a
term?
reciprocal
Thank you,
preference.
reciprocal, right. So we're a year out
So
to
one
change
of the
that?
one of the cases is actually out of Arizona. I think it's called Big D Construction, and there you need to have the state law in place to give the Board of County Commissioners the authority to grant a local preference. But there also needs to be the background to address the strict scrutiny test that's rationally related to the benefit that can be expected to be derived. So you're also addressing the privileges and immunities clause, and you're addressing the equal protection clause as applicable.
And I know going by percentages is very misleading because, so, you look at a job that's 10,000, well, 3% is not a big deal. But what if it's 30 million? So that is the trick bag, and then legalities come in. If you're 1%, you can benefit from it, but you can be hurt by it as well. So
Emergency legislation could be effective July 1, 2022, if it passes the General Assembly and gets signed.
and that is the earliest to affect. So basically today, with the decision we have in front of us, law dictates that we follow this procedure. Is that correct?
I mean, you could reject the bids, but
then
that doesn't mean that when it's rebid that we won't be back in the same situation.
Right.
Commissioner Hans, quick question.
Sure.
I thought this might be a question for John. Don't we have a clause in our contracts that says that we could go with who we want if it's in the best interest of the county?
So that's criteria number 7, which is addressed in attachment A, I believe, to this agenda item, analyzed by staff for the commissioner's consideration. The motion that's been prepared for the board actually adopts that finding in attachment A. The board could reach a different conclusion as pertains to item number 7, and I know we've done that in the past for things like generators, where response time might be a consideration. I don't know if you could justify the same here, but the
I
board.
was gonna say, does this criteria match up?
Right.
Because Commissioner Gadway is correct, and we've had this discussion many times. Obviously, we want all the work here, and before we had put that reciprocal clause in there, we used to agonize. It'd be a few dollars, and we would sit here and we would watch contract after contract leave here, and every once in a while we get one to stay here, and it was like a party. Like, wow, we actually get to grant it to someone here. How much leadway is in that, John? Because obviously, everything you do, back to affects other things.
So number 7 is any other information bearing on the decision to award the contract. And clearly, awarding based on a local preference without the enabling legislation in place is not sufficient basis. But if the board were to ask staff to reevaluate this and bring it back next meeting, I don't know that the answer would be different, but
Is there any latitude in there to also the satisfaction of the work? Is that allowed to play in there as well? That, or that is
so
too
that would
vague?
be more appropriate in a request for proposals where you're looking at the technical capability and the experience of the offeror, but this is a bid, so bids are generally awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder.
Sir, I would also just like to reiterate that if this goes back for some type of review, that whoever is reviewing it takes a close look at attachment C, line 20, because that one item makes the delta difference. And in my humble opinion, if I was looking at this being such a great massive difference in price times the 12 expectations, I don't know that both bidding parties properly understand what the scope of work is on that. And if the other party does not understand that and we award it to them, then they're going to come back and say, oh, well, how much extra is it going to cost? And they end up billing us extra and it goes above and beyond what the original was.
It is hard to imagine that work on that line item could be done for that amount of money.
I agree. 98, I'm sorry, yes,
No, you
you're
can.
correct.
Yeah, it's
I don't-
public. It's public knowledge. $98. But now we in the past we have history with companies that obviously did not understand the scope. We've had to go the back and forth. Is there any leadway on that, John, to look at it and say, I mean, or once again, it's basically cut and dry, pretty cookie cutter?
Or can that fall under item 7 or consideration 7?
Experience in performing the work is important, but if they meet the minimum qualifications, you're supposed to award it to the lowest bidder. With respect to number 20, if the board would give us another 2 weeks, we would ask that the department and procurement look to see if there's an unbalancing issue so that the bid could be determined to be balanced or unbalanced. If it's deliberately undercutting a high-frequency cut, in this case, that's what it's 12 times
12
per
times.
year that they would cut this grass on Armory Road. If they're deliberately underbidding that one to be able to come in as the lowest bidder, that's considered unbalanced bid, and it should have been rejected.
So there's, I mean, the options that we have are accept or reject the bid or just send it back for further review.
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion that we take this line or this business item back to procurement.
That would be
Second.
to reject this bid and have them send it back.
It,
To review
It's not
line
necessarily a
20.
rejection, it's
Not
a
a
review to
rejection,
make
yes.
sure that,
right.
It's balanced.
Second.
Second. Oh, sorry.
And just for my purposes, you know, I feel like an old man saying this. I have experienced this multiple times, and Commissioner Gadway and Commissioner McConkey, In deference, I mean, it's a position I took years ago. The outcome may be the same because the bottom line is the lowest responsible bidder is the policy. So, but I have no problem in reviewing it. We'll come back and make a decision.
Agree.
Thank you.
And that's why we always require 3 years of experience, is to make sure that whatever company contracts or bids on whatever work has experience, we feel safe that they know what they're doing. Is how much leeway is there? Commissioner Gadway said, so what if they come in and figure out they can't do it for $98 and they come back to you and say, well, we need 198 instead of 98? Is there leeway in the contract for that to happen?
I don't believe so. John, I would believe that we would have to put it out to bid again.
With grass cutting in particular, we have seen opportunities where they've asked for an amendment, and then it's up to the county as to whether or not to grant the amendment to change a price,
Right.
change order.
Right.
After the contract's been awarded? Right. But if, just so I understand too, if they did come back to us now and say, oh yeah, we did not bid that correctly, we would put it out to bid again for everyone.
No, we call their bid bond,
Okay.
because they're tied to the pricing they've offered, but it's an estimate, so.
The other item that I just wanted to add on to this for your all's consideration, please, is the current vendor. I believe that he came in, looks like seventh, give or take. There was he came in billing significantly less last year than what was anticipated. So, in my opinion, he's actually given back to the county at that point as well.
Well, I think as Sharon alluded to earlier, this is a fluid contract where, you set your price per cut. So it depends on the weather, how many
Right.
times you're gonna cut. And they can expand the scope, and there's some, negotiation about that. But, so that price is gonna vary all the time. It's very weather related, so it's gonna happen.
I appreciate the consideration on this. It's not a huge amount for
No,
us,
no,
but it's a big
this
amount
is
for him. But
something that
it's an important point.
this goes back years. I mean, this is, and a lot of jurisdictions are struggling with this because, you are always trying to take care of your own first,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
And unfortunately, it is taxpayer dollars, and sometimes federal money's in and state monies are in, that it is, but that's why it stays fluid like it does.
And just for public's perception, there's been a lot of alluding here. We are trying to work on a legislative fix to give us some leeway for local preference. The backside of that is that if you do that, someone else can do the same thing to your vendors when they cross those county lines. So it's a balancing act of,
Right, unforeseen
Right.
circumstances.
Right.
Now all of a sudden that guy was doing business in XYZ,
right,
and they said, well, hey, you know what? You guys just hurt our guys. Now we're going to throw a rock back
Right.
against theirs. So, it kind of goes back to when Commissioner Dunner told me, you fix something over here and you screw something up over there, and that's when we did that first thing that we did. We tried to take that into consideration, that if somebody specifically wanted to attack us, we had the ability to do the same thing back.
right. So, any other discussion on the motion? The motion is that we send back the bid for further examination by finance. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is presentation, Deputy Administrator Vasallo.
Good morning, Commissioners. Linda Vasallo, Deputy County Administrator. With me this morning is Chris Comer.
Good
He's the
morning.
Good morning.
Director of Government and Community Affairs, and he is our Comcast representative. So I'm going to walk you through a presentation this morning to give you a quick update on where we were as to where we are now. Last April, we came before you to set the balls in motion to build Comcast out in Calvert County. So just really quickly, I Just remind the public of what the franchise scope does and what it does not do. So this cable franchise agreement that we get many, many questions about from the public, it's actually for a cable franchise television agreement versus broadband agreement. But, you know, a byproduct of cable is the broadband, and Comcast is the only provider that is willing to make that investment. We have tried to recruit other companies, but they're the only ones making the capital investment in our community at this point. Originally, in the December 2018 agreement, the Comcast franchise agreement called for 15 miles per home per mile density requirement. It is still the lowest density in the state of Maryland. And we moved our drop point from 125 feet to 300 feet. So what did that mean? It meant prior, if you had an address, anything beyond at 125, it stopped. So the commissioners approved taking it up to 300 feet. At the time, it had a cost-sharing formula if you were beyond that 300 feet on what you would pay and what Comcast would put into the project. When we originally started the project, there were 20 unserved communities, 475 homes, and as it stands as of today, we have 310 that are not connected. And when I say homes, that's address points that the cable would go past. These are the communities that were identified. We are still doing intake on communities. I don't suspect we'll get a lot of new addresses, but we are actively trying to do that. On the left-hand side, you'll see the communities. We had an original projection date, and now we have the updated July 2021 projection. A lot of these are considered to be the phase 1, and then we'll talk about phase 2 in a second, but we had slate adjustments mostly because of easement issues, and there are some supply issues now with a lot of money being out there for broadband. We are seeing some delays in ability to get construction services. So how do I find information about the project? So first, I'm going to ask Daryl, who nobody can see, to pop over to the county website. We've created a portal. When you go to the Comcast build-out section, you'll be able to submit a question about the build-out, and you can submit your address for build-out if we don't have it already. And then I'm going to move to the next slides, Daryl. It's controlling back there. We've also created a project tracking GIS map, and what this is going to show the community is, and Daryl, would you mind popping through to that GIS map for me? What that will show the community is where your community is as far as build-out is concerned. And right now, we have everybody set to red, which is not started because that means we're still in the process of getting easements. In the next couple of weeks, their next bi-weekly construction meeting, you'll start to see a little bit of activity in there. So in progress will mean we're starting to work for easements, we're starting to get required contracts in place to construct, and then once your area is done, it'll be set to complete. So it's just like a traffic light. And you can get that through the website project tracking that. So for FY22, we had originally come to the board and said we want to use a franchise fee for this money. Franchise fee is paid for by the cable users in the community, and that comes into a dedicated fund. Commissioners did approve that dedication, but with the ARPA money that has become available, the commissioners asked us to come back, get a board consensus to use ARPA funds for applying the construction build-out. And just as a side note, when we are talking about ARPA funds, the administrator stated this morning at staff meeting, we are putting together a presentation for the board on all the department requests for ARPA funds. So we'll come back as a full presentation, we'll get your direction, and then we'll come back with a full budget adjustment for all of the monies that will be applied here.
And Linda, for the folks at home, can you explain for just a little bit about how the ARPA funds, getting everyone connected, how that money helps opposed to, say, us coming out of the general fund, so to speak? Can you kind of, so
Sure.
they understand where this money's coming from?
Yep, ARPA funds are from the federal government, and prior to those funds being available, we were taking money that was being paid into the general fund through franchise fees users and dedicating it for this capital project. That money will now go back into the general fund, which will be used for any projects you want to dedicate that to, and then the federal funds will be applied for this capital build-out.
Thank you.
Also, the Governor's Office of Statewide Broadband through Governor Hogan. They've saved us so far about 1.4 million. And we're going to talk a little bit in the next slide about the funding, additional funding, but this provided the ability to go into long drops. So let's go through that, what that means. The commissioners directed me to come back with a plan to go beyond the 300 feet. So any individuals that want that Comcast service, that hit that 125-foot, the 300-foot threshold, can now get access, if the board agrees, to have Comcast to their home with no cost to the consumer. Now, we do recognize that some other citizens have paid for that in the past, but there will be a stop date when this would be available. So that's one thing we'll talk about requesting action on. And then the funding that has been used in the past, the total construction project hasn't really changed. It's still a $3.7 million contract. But that's the full number we presented in April because we weren't sure if we were going to be going past the 300-foot mark. The state contribution has actually risen to $2.25 million. And with Comcast's help, they've dedicated a grant writer to help us get those funds in place. So I just wanted to thank them publicly for that. Our county contribution still stays the same, but the difference now is that 1.4 to 1.6 million now will be used for ARPA money instead of general fund money. And then Comcast still put in $406,000 in their own capital funds to do this. We anticipate getting the full 310, and there's just about 50 miles of cable that they have to put in the ground or on aerial. So just to quickly summarize, the current franchise agreement says your connection will be up to 300 feet. The board originally said we're going to stop at 300 feet, and anything beyond that the public would have to pay for their home. And then just looking at all the telework and connectivity concerns, you've asked us to come back to consider going beyond the 300 feet, which doesn't really require a change to our franchise agreement. It will require an MOU that we'll bring back to you at a different date should you agree to this. We have looked at grant opportunities, which we just covered. We're continuing to work with the State Rail and Comcast to find additional funds for build-out if we need them. And our matching cost remains the same, but again, it's coming out of federal ARPA money instead of the local general fund. So today, we're asking your authority to go beyond the 300 feet. Should you agree to that, we'll come back with the updated agreement I just mentioned, and I will need your authority to utilize ARPA funds to do the full build-out. And that's all I have.
Chris.
If I could just add, with the state grant, out of the 310 homes that we're anticipating building, 66 of those have long driveways beyond 300 feet. So those will be covered under this. I don't have there's 23 in Barstow. I don't have the numbers for that. But just looking at, say, the phase 2, the 20 projects spread throughout the county, that's an additional $802,000 in capital just to build those 43 long driveways. All of that will be covered under this state grant, so there's no additional cost to the county in order to extend service to all those homes.
And you know, I think we talked about this when we originally were doing this, how we knew we would see this again. Obviously with the possibility of kids having to do schoolwork at home, never dreaming that as soon as the mask came off, they were going right back on. It was hopefully that we saw some light at the tunnel, and I'm not trying to jinx anything that we're not going to have kids back in school, but this is more vindication that we need to have connectivity to every home that wants it, to make sure we can do that.
And Commissioner, to your point, we did check with the Board of Education about those homes that did not have service, and we have included that in this build-out. Comcast has verified all that information, so they provided us a list. We ran it by Comcast. We vetted against what we knew, and that's all been combined, so there won't be an issue there.
I mean, I'm sure some people probably thought that we were being extremely proactive, but, you know, you can just see the future that kids are going to, that might be the only schooling they get, and you have to have internet.
Commissioner, to your point, because of the county acting when they did, you're certainly ahead of the curve. You're ahead of the game. What changed from when we were in here last was the American Rescue Act plan. And now suddenly, as one county official told me it's raining money in Maryland and across the country. So suddenly, from being ahead of the curve, every county is now trying to address this problem, trying to tackle it. And it really ranges from some counties not even fully understanding where those unserved areas are to just having vast needs. The state of Delaware sent us 11,000 addresses to survey.
And I know this is a
And
large,
It's just an example of how big a problem, and that's going on across the country. So there are challenges that, and just trying to keep up with all this demand. Fortunately, because of taking the steps the county did, we've done a lot of preliminary work for the Barstow project. We're close to submitting the permit applications to the utility pole owners of Smecco and Verizon in the next 2 weeks. So at that point, once they give us the permits, what's any make-ready work that, I think there's 250-plus utility poles that, they'll have to come out and ride out, look at, and see. There's certain SAG requirements. We may have to, pay to replace a number of poles, but, so it's a big project. But once they give us the green light, then we can give you a much better accurate estimate of.
because you know where I'm going, yes, in a perfect world, 2 years?
Oh, no, I mean, again, I'm optimistic that we can get a lot of this done. I'm hoping next year, but again, we can tell you we can give you projections, but until we have the permits in hand, then it's hard to really say, here's
Sure.
what we're going to be building, here's when we're going to be. And some of that's just outside.
And you've been
outside
trying
of-
to help us with a project we talked about earlier where doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency sometimes on the state permitting side. And so we're gonna have to be a squeaky wheel, and I mean, it's just,
And I know the county has a great relationship with
Mhm.
Smecco. I know Linda has a great relationship with Smecco. So I think once we have these applications ready, we'll sit down with them.
Well,
Just
and-
try to say, what can we do? Again, Verizon also was attached to those poles, and we're gonna need their cooperation as well.
the one case had been lingering for a few months. Now with a little bit of squeakiness, and I think we're down to what, potentially next week? So, and that shouldn't have to happen, but, I mean, I think we're just gonna have to stay very tenacious because like you say, now all these counties are gonna say, hey, Calvert County's been doing this, well, we wanna just, we need to make sure, hey, we were there first, we need to be served first.
No, and we're excited about this partnership, and I think it really will be a model for other counties to look at. But with the, using the federal funds, there's different ties and requirements that come with that takes time to review all those and make sure. I'm sure you're still figuring some of those things out as well. So that's taken a while, but we've been working with the state to finalize our MOU. We sent a draft MOU to the county for their review. So I think we're close to kind of buttoning things up where we can start to really make some progress.
Good.
Commissioner Gamble?
Ms. Vassallo, as I hear the amount of dollars being spent and everything else, I hear from some of the other counties in southern Maryland that they received state money that was sent to Board of Ed when Board of Ed's requested that for the connectivities of the students. And some of the other counties, I understand that it was 7 figures, somewhere up in the millions, that other counties received to be able to help their build-out of infrastructure for broadband out to those students' properties. With the amount of money that looks like we're spending here, did Calvert County Public Schools or Board of Ed request any money, or did they receive any money for this?
It's my understanding, Commissioner, that they did not apply for that particular grant you were talking about. I don't have that dollar amount in front of me. I'll get it to you, but they did not apply for that grant.
Do you know if it's still possible? It might be too late. They might have missed the mark on it, a couple $1 million. Do you know if it's still possible for them to apply if they choose to?
I'll double check that, but I think that grant opportunity is closed. I don't know what else is out there for them. We get information almost daily, so I'll double check and see what's there, but I don't
But Board of
think,
Ed we may have missed out on a
Correct.
couple, $3 million or something like that
I think it's close to
from
two.
lack of action.
And I'm not, I haven't followed everything as closely. I know the state did do a grant program that went straight to the school systems instead of the counties to apply for last year. I believe that the school system did get some money to help pay for mobile hotspots that were deployed to the unserved communities. And so I think that's what their focus was, on, instead of looking at, say, extending service to unserved homes. And I think that, to be honest with you, I talked to Wycomico County Public Schools, they did the same thing. Cecil County Public Schools, they did the same thing. There was a disconnect between the state sending that money to the schools and maybe not letting the counties know as well, so that they could work together.
It'd be kind of nice to actually work together, wouldn't it?
That's what I heard from my counterparts in some other counties.
Yeah.
Back to
If
last
they
week's
had
or
known,
2 weeks ago meeting when I said it hasn't been a fluid relationship.
Right.
That is some of the things that have happened, and so I just can't stress enough. Leave the egos at the door and work for the best interest.
But I think a lot of people, their focus was on just connecting with using the mobile hotspots and not really looking beyond that. I think St. Mary's County was the only one who made a approach that different.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yeah, Commissioner McConkey, I hadn't forgot you.
So it was my understanding that that grant that was offered to the school boards had to be used in a very short period of time. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Chris Comer could add to this, that Curry had reached out to Comcast and that there was no way that they could get the trenches dug and get the easements and do everything in the time frame that the state was requiring. And that's why it wasn't applied for. I don't know if that's true. Then I had also heard possibly that they didn't qualify for nowhere near as much because they had stipulations and guidelines that were based on the poverty levels in our county.
I'm not sure about any of that. If the state was using CARES funds, then at the time, I think the expectation was you'd have to connect, not just build it, but you'd have to connect someone by the end of last year. I'm sorry. So my understanding is if the state was using CARES funds for that grant, that there was a requirement that anything you built had to be built by the end of the year and connected. And so that would cause some problems. I mean, we did some projects in Delaware using CARES funds, and St. Mary's with CARES funds, where, you know, there was a lot of funding available, but by the time you surveyed these areas, looked at any potential delays because of aerial pole attachments, it really limited how much you could do.
Gotcha. Appreciate you helping me understand.
That's my understanding that it couldn't be done in the time frame because they only had 3 to 4 months to get that work done in order to get that grant money, and it was almost impossible to be completed.
Now the worst part is I think they ended up extending the CARES funds this year, but at the time nobody.
Well, I would hope the state would have the foresight to know that it takes them 3 to 4 months just to get the permit out. So, to put that harsh of a timeline on there, I would hope that would be excluded, and maybe the timeline would be once everything was issued, the work was done. But without seeing the grant, I don't have any knowledge of that, but I would hope there was some type of verbiage in that, because if it was that tight, then you're not doling any money out to anybody.
No, like I say, if you look at the list of what each county received, it was all in the same ballpark, but there was, I remember St. Mary's and Montgomery County were two that really kind of got a larger share of that state funds.
Commissioners, if
Yeah, I just, what I'm getting at is, I don't think that the Board of Ed accidentally, mistakenly just lost out on millions of dollars. It was an impossible task that they wouldn't have been able to be able to get the money and do the work in time. That's my understanding, but that would be a good question for Dr. Curry.
Administrator?
Commissioners, Mark Willis, County Administrator. One of the reasons for that money up front when it was provided was not so much to put in the infrastructure, because this has been a great learning lesson for America in general, that we didn't have the full infrastructure that reached out to every single last mile. You're not going to accomplish that in a year. That money was really meant for, or at least I would say a majority of that money was meant for buying the actual apparatus, buying the laptops, the computer systems, and on behalf of Dr. Curry, what the Board of County, or the Board of Education did for Calvert County was they had been purchasing those laptops and iPads, et cetera, for our students in the previous years. We actually had a laptop for every single student. St. Mary's County did not have a laptop for every single student to take home with them. So it wasn't really, it wasn't as much to get the infrastructure built as it was to give them actually something to type on and connect with. But there are several other things that I think we should look at when we consider the benefits of this. So, county employees couldn't necessarily telework. Citizens in this county couldn't necessarily telework, and that was their business. When they got sent home, they couldn't telework the way that they needed to. Home business, school systems, but one of the big challenges that Linda and Chris have worked on is that when you go out into rural communities like Calvert County, there are people that don't want connectivity because they've never had it, they've never needed it, they don't understand why we need it, and that's still one of the areas that we're working on to this day, is to get those rights of way accounted for so that we can provide this last mile connectivity. So certainly Linda has worked on this entirely on my behalf, on your behalf. Chris has been right there with her making this happen, but it's an ongoing process. And so the citizens know that the American Freedom Act money and then this new legislation that's coming out are heavy in broadband funding. And as we go to MACO, the Maryland County Association's meeting on the 18th and up to that weekend, one of the governor's big initiatives is to make sure that we have that broadband monies, those monies going forward, to make sure that we do complete the connectivity process. So it's not going to get worse, it's going to get better. And I do like the fact that staff jumped on this early on, and I think we are ahead of the game. So hopefully it'll work out for us.
I could just say, just to echo Mark's point, it has been an interesting experience just drilling down into why some homes aren't connected, some homes that could have service today that aren't connected, or even as we're trying to extend service to make sure. And it really runs the gamut from just people who don't believe in technology or have fears of technology, or just not understanding the importance of it. And it's not just unique to here. During the pandemic, I worked with Anne Arundel County Public Schools. They had a number of 3,000 people, students who, when the pandemic hit, that just dropped out. And so we worked with them to try and see what we could do to get as many connected. And really, it ran into a lot of issues where it was people who just didn't want the service for their own personal reasons. In some cases, it was undocumented residents, who didn't want to show proof of ID. In others, it was just families who just didn't see the importance for themselves, and so they didn't see it for their children. So again, there's going to continue to be a push for education. One last plug that I would make is the FCC and through the federal funding set up a temporary assistance program. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, where if you're a low-income resident or if you've been negatively impacted by COVID, if you've lost your job or had something else happen, you can apply for this broadband benefit. And right now, you can get $50 a month towards your broadband service. It's a temporary program because there's a set amount of funding. No one knows how many people will apply. In the infrastructure bill, there looks like potentially more funding to keep that program going. And talking about partnerships with the state is working to stand up a temporary program as well that would provide an additional $15 per month. And there's also a credit for a laptop computer or some sort of device, which is part of the problem. So I shared some of that information with Linda recently, but hopefully that's another way of helping make sure people are getting connected.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Weems, questions?
I don't have a question. I just wanted,
To commend Chris for all your hard work on this as well, and what we need to do to authorize the final fees. Is it consensus or?
So, before we go there,
Certainly.
so Chris, you mentioned the permitting process. Exactly where are we in the permitting process and what has to happen, I guess is my question, so that,
Yeah, so I think again, for the Barstow project, which is the biggest project, 150 plus.
so
out-
for
out
the
of
public, that's where we're gonna start, in Barstow.
Yeah, there's
Because
some, there's some smaller projects that we can start sooner, but they have long driveways. So once we know, once we have the commitment that, the county wants to cover the long driveways, we can move forward with those. Example, you may have heard from some residents on Marsh Lane. All of those homes, it's a small project, 15 homes, we can complete it in 30 days, but every single home has a long driveway. So again, once we finalize the MOU with the county, then, we've already placed utility, Miss Utilities come out and marked where all those, it's underground lines, has marked everything, so we're ready to go. But Barstow, because it's such a big project, I mean, that's like 19 total miles of construction. That's, it's 10 miles of pole permits, so 252 poles. So in 2 weeks, we'll submit that to SMECO. At that point, it's kind of in their hands, in Verizon's hands, to walk out, drive out and look at every pole, identify what poles will need to be either strengthened or replaced. They'll submit an invoice to us to pay for that work, because if you're the last one attaching, you have to pay for everything. So they'll submit invoices to us, we'll pay that, they'll do the work. Once they finish their work, then they'll issue us permits, and then we can get started.
So the permitting process you're talking about is with the utilities, it's not
The
through
biggest-
state government or through county government?
There's times where there will be a state permit or county permits, and we certainly know if there's a county permit that we can count on you. Maybe helping with the state process as well. If there's a state highway crossing, sometimes, I'm sorry. I'll try to, with the state highways, if you have to have a lane closure, you have to submit that in advance, and that takes time to schedule. But I know the county has a good relationship with the state highway department. So with the state and local permits, I'm optimistic. With the utilities, I know everyone's busy right now. I'm sure that they're doing a lot of other work as well. So we're we're just kind of at their mercy as to how quickly they can do it. But again, I think we're fortunate here in Southern Maryland to have SMECO and a good relationship with SMECO versus some other utility providers that could be more problematic. But it's still a big project for them. So I think getting together with them at the start, and I know they understand the importance of this project to the county, but just getting together at the start and just asking anything they can do to expedite would be beneficial.
Well, I think it's just important to remember that we approved this project last April or March or whenever it was.
I think it was
and
November.
at that time, we were willing to commit our own money to get it done. And as you said, in that time now, it's just raining money for broadband, and everybody's jumping on the boat. We hope that we're at the head of the line since we
Without a doubt.
started so early. And I've already heard there is issues with getting infrastructure materials because now everybody's trying to run broadband. So we're very hopeful, and we hope the citizens understand that we made this commitment a long time ago. We were not just getting here today.
No,
And,
absolutely not.
we,
And like I say, I think, again, we've already scheduled these bi-weekly calls with Linda, our construction project manager. We hired a new project manager to oversee the project. So I think having that communication, she should be up to speed on everything that's going on. And if there's opportunities for the county to help, I'm confident she will.
I think the word is tenacious.
Yes, yeah.
Is going to take that because, like Commissioner Hand said, now that they see the money, go, oh, we were willing to walk out on that ledge alone. So,
Well, and what I'm hearing from Commissioner Hance is managing expectations, because the time frame is not going to be tomorrow,
No, it's,
right?
I've been looking to have someone do the siding on my house, and, it's taken months just to get someone to come out and look at doing the job.
it's because
Oh, it's just silly.
the government's paying them all to sit home and do nothing. Why are they going to come inside your house? Sorry,
So
I
I'm hoping,
diverted.
I'm hoping I'll still get it done this year, but, it's just, they're having trouble ordering supplies, getting supplies. There's so much construction activity going on. It's very robust right now.
Wish I had
And,
stock in
and,
one of them lumber
and everybody
companies.
wants it yesterday.
No, and we get that. Everyone wants that yesterday, and we want to do this as quickly and timely as we can.
We wanted it
But-
last week, not yesterday. So whatever we can do, whatever bumps there are on the road, whatever we can do, we need to know to put pressure wherever pressure needs to go.
No, I appreciate that. And like I say, I think with the Barstow project, in 2 weeks, we'll be at a position where, that may be helpful.
So whether it's you or Linda, we need to schedule regular updates.
Yeah.
Because we don't want this to fall by the wayside and all of a sudden it's 2 or 3 months. So we want to know what's going on and what needs to be done when that needs to happen.
And we should be able to provide every 2 weeks, a list of where those projects are and what activities.
Well, then good, you've set the timeline. Every 2 weeks, we're going to get
No,
an
no.
update
There you
of
go.
where we are. And for the public out there that's, that Linda talked about the map, you need to go on there and look at the map. And if you're not on the map and you want service, you need to reach out. And if you're not connected, you can call somebody here and they will help you get where you need to be. But we don't want to leave anybody out.
If I could, you're absolutely correct, Commissioner Hans. When we started this project, we had our system maps and we overlaid them with the county's GSI maps, but maps aren't always perfect. And there may be homes where our network goes by their home and we don't have it as unserviceable because technically they could get service, but because of their long driveways, they don't have service. And so those are the ones where we really need people to self-identify because there's just not a good way of capturing them.
And that's why we had proposed the map in the very beginning, so people could look and see if they're on the map, then they're good. If they're not, then they need to reach out. Because we didn't want everybody calling that doesn't have service, because that would just tie up a lot of manpower. But that's the purpose of the map. And like I say, if you're not internet connected and, pick up the phone and reach out, and we'll help you get through that process.
I think the map is a great tool, and you're right, it's the best tool for people to go reach out to make sure that they're covered where they are.
So we'll be updating those maps within a day or two of us getting the new addresses that are being updated, and our GIS team is on there to support it. It's also, we're going to be doing intake on the calls and any forms that they filled on our portal through the administrator's office, and we have cross-trained staff to provide enough training to make sure we can support those that are coming in. Okay.
So Commissioner Weems asked what our duty is today. Our duty today is to extend that 300-foot connection to make sure that everybody gets connected. And as it stands today, we won't have to expend any general fund resources to do that. And
That's the plan.
as Linda alluded to earlier, we know there are people out there that paid a lot of money to have Comcast run directly to their house. And we didn't know this money was raining from the sky, but there was an opportunity here to get everybody connected, so we don't want them to have any reason not to connect if they want to. So,
Mr. President, now, are we going to retro back to a certain date? So say somebody did this a week ago, 2 weeks ago. What are we able to do, county attorney?
I don't think,
I mean, is
connected
there any
anybody?
relief for those folks that, in good faith, they,
I can ask how many. I can't imagine there've been a lot. If you're looking at, say, this fiscal year, the July 1, I can't imagine.
and I hate to add that fly in the ointment, but, you're the guy at House A, and now they did B, C, and D next to you, and you say, hey, I was trying to get my kid internet, and,
so have we done any outreach to those individuals that don't have it to let them know we're coming?
We're going to continue to do that as soon as this is approved, because the prior communication we did with the PUG was up to 300. So once the commissioners approve this concept, we'll start re-educating the public on the
I
plans.
only ask that because if they know that, then they're not going to do that.
right.
So if we've done some kind of notification that they know we're getting ready to come, unless for some reason they're in a big hurry, and then that's on them. But I'm not crazy about retroactive, but that's just me speaking. Cause you know how that is, then where do you draw that line? You
Well,
know,
and
it
that's what I was
just
saying,
keeps
you know,
going.
and I don't know if this money is specific to dates, times, you know, to where that could be
Yeah,
addressed.
Again, if nothing else, I can go back to say July 1 for the new fiscal
Just to see
year
what it
and
looks
just to
like.
see.
I would, yes. Cause I would hate, you know, like say somebody, they wrote a check yesterday and then here we show up today, you know, and, so, especially if the government's willing to, you know, federal government's willing to spend that money.
So
Just asking.
That's the action today.
Yes. Okay,
Extend the 300 foot to
okay,
unlimited.
very good.
Okay.
Good to go.
That needs a
So
motion.
motion or consensus?
It needs,
Motion?
we should do a motion.
So said,
Costs money.
so moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that we extend the 300 foot restriction to whatever to get to the door. Okay?
All right,
Any discussion on that motion?
just,
Commissioners, we also need to include the ARPA funds in that
Yes.
Oh.
motion.
yes.
So, Commissioner Gadway, will you amend your motion
Since it's already been seconded, yes, I will amend the motion.
and the seconder will agree?
Second.
So the motion on the floor is that we,
You know, this is why ideas are sometimes good
Yeah.
before the motion.
that we eliminate the 300 foot restriction on the no cost installation and that we fund that with ARPA funds.
And number 2 as well, Commissioner.
And number 2, the grant, state grant funding.
We will be back, we'll be back with an agreement to update our last agreement with you that will take it officially beyond the 300 feet, but we can start working now with that, so.
Right.
Three actions, beyond the 300 feet,
You good?
return with an agreement and authorize staff to use the ARPA funds.
All right. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll take that as an aye. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you, Miss Linda.
All right. Next item on the agenda is public comment.
And there was one caller on the line last check, so if caller on the line would like to provide public comment, please press star 9.
Caller 2803, we are ready to receive your comments. Please state whether you are speaking by yourself or for a group.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Joseph Cormier, and I'll be speaking as an individual. I want to thank you this morning for all your discussion on the Comcast build-out. Thank you for addressing the many students and staff that were put at risk when they had to host internet cafes at Calvert County Public Schools for the sole reason that students couldn't connect to an ISP like Comcast or maintain a cellular hotspot for digital streaming for their classes. Why are we settling for broadband instead of advocating for a fiber service? What is this broadband doing? What is this board doing to investigate the possibility of setting up a municipal fiber service or bringing in other service providers? We can't wait for the promise of wireless 5 or 6G or the pipe dream of satellite internet. Anyone who's tried to use Sirius or XM radio in Calvert County knows that as soon as you turn off Route 4 into our heavily forested neighborhoods that we love, the signal drops out completely. What is Calvert doing to require all the new condos and townhouses and apartments we're growing like corn to have high-speed internet ready built in? If we want the next generation of businesses ready to compete on the global scale, they have to be able to connect to the best high-speed internet. And I'm continued to be confused by the lack of trust and communication between the Board of Ed and the county commissioners that you brought up this morning. You interviewed and selected Ms. Claggett in the winter of 2019 to replace Mr. McConkey, who had served many years on the Board of Ed, and in 2020, after the passing of Mr. Phelan, Mr. Hart nominated and this board unanimously voted to appoint Mr. Nutter, a former commissioner, with less than 3 minutes of discussion. So I don't understand with this crossover of memberships how you guys continue to be unable to communicate effectively a year later. Thank you for the opportunity for unlimited public comment, and I appreciate all the work you guys are doing and discussions you've had today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I don't see anyone in the room standing to offer public comment.
Thank you. So the last item on the agenda is Commissioner reports. Commissioner McConkey, you have a report?
Yes, I would just like to send my condolences to the Donovan family. There's a lot of people that have just recently moved here and probably have no idea what Gerald did for Calvert County. I remember the years and years of the Cancer Gala, and the amount of money that he raised for that organization and the good things that he did in this community. He was one of the first guys that I met when I first moved to Calvert County. And, his phone was always open and available. And I enjoyed the time that I got to spend with him, and it would be a huge loss for Calvert County. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Hart?
I'd like to express my condolences as well for the Donovan family, and I want to thank all the organizations that came for National Night Out. They did a fantastic job as always. A lot of representation across the county, and I had a very unique opportunity this weekend that county staff was very helpful. County Administrator Mark Willis and Ashley from our office were very, very helpful with helping me recognize Girl Scout Troop 641. Their troop leader is Jeannie Carroll, and they had a presentation. We had a presentation for them we tried to do at the front of the courthouse. Well, it was raining cats and dogs, so we brought them in here, which was a very unique opportunity, and they had a chance to come in and see all the fossils on the wall there that we have contributed to, and gave them a little brief history about some of the stuff that we do. And they were very helpful to have everything ready for me to help me with this. And I want to recognize them publicly. You know, when COVID hit, some people used COVID as a reason not to do some things. These young ladies embraced it and still volunteered and still helped, and just 4 intelligent, very nice young ladies, and they did a lot of incredible stuff over the last couple years, and I just want to recognize them. One was Olivia Cox. She had received the Gold Award. Zoe Hoosman, she got the Silver Trayful Award. Elizabeth Wilson, she got the Silver Trayful Award. And Kayla Granlund got the Silver Trayful Award. And I know they are all going to college. I know they are going to do great things and be very productive. And it was a very unique opportunity to bring them in here and really kind of hear from them everything that they had been doing. And so very, very proud of them and thankful for what they've done.
Good. Commissioner Gadway?
I'd also like to echo the previous remarks to the Donovan family and my condolences. I want to thank all the different department heads and division chiefs and admin and everybody for last Tuesday. It was a marathon day bringing everything to light, but I really appreciate the time that was spent. And I learned as much, if not more, going through the 256 emails that I received on Saturday afternoon. So I did read them, all in all, thank you. I'm hoping I'm getting better each day.
Thank you. Mr. Weems?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Well, in addition to all of your duties, Commissioner Gadway as well as Commissioner Hance and I attended an Eagle Scout Court of Honor on Sunday for Brandon Souza. He's a great young man, very selfless, and just you can tell he's going to go far in the future. The National Night Out was last Tuesday. Made a few rounds. Apologize for not making them all. It's tough every year. I have a little bit of my mother in me, and I will start to talk to someone, and 25, 30 minutes later, I'm like, I got to go.
I wouldn't really think about any of that there.
No, you don't have that?
Yeah,
No, okay, all right. So, and Commissioner Hart, thank you for Saturday's Girl Scout event.
No,
The
glad to
family
do it.
was
Honored
yes,
to do it.
Absolutely, but much appreciated, I believe, and thank you for doing that.
Oh, staff bailed me out. They had me set up good. So.
And I'm sorry I couldn't get here. I was detained in St. Leonard
Well, the rain was
with
a big
work.
curveball too, so
Yeah.
that was, you know.
Yeah. And I too want to extend condolences to the friends and family of the Donovan family. That's all I have, sir.
Well, thank you. So Commissioner Weems mentioned last Tuesday night was National Night Out. I went to Calvert Pines in Prince Frederick. I went to Chesapeake Beach, and then I ended up in Huntingtown. And one year I rode with Commissioner Weems. I can't do that again because he's right. If you ride with Commissioner Weems, he makes maybe one event because he just. I had to keep saying, "Come on, Steve, we got to go. We got to go."
We had you down CRE for quite a while that night.
Because if you don't know, there are like, I don't know, normally there's 15 or 20 events. You can't make them all. You know, it's a 2-hour time frame for the most part, and 3 is about my limit. Steve has won because he knows everybody and he's got to talk to them all, and, you know, bless his heart. So, but it is still a good event, and we had a lot less communities participate this year for various reasons, but it's a good time. You get a good time to get out and talk to citizens about their issues and get to see the good in each community. So, and Steve mentioned the Boy Scouts. I also attended an Eagle Scout ceremony Sunday morning for London Mazzell at Chesapeake Beach. And what we've learned is, you know, the Eagle Scouts, as Commissioner Hart said, they were still working on their badges during COVID, but they couldn't have these ceremonies. So now there are ceremonies backed up to the wall. And I want to put out a call. You know, in my 2.5 years, I don't recall a single invitation to a Girl Scout Gold ceremony. And I don't know why we don't get invited to them. Apparently they're out there. But we would be more than happy to come.
I've only
if
been
we
to
got
a
invited.
few.
So
but
I
the
hear
much
there's
more.
one coming in September that I'll have to invite myself to. But anyway, you know, so that we're not being accused of being sexist.
I heard that they were afraid you would eat all their cookies.
I heard that about you, but nonetheless, the one on Sunday morning, the young man's mother made cupcakes, and they were pretty darn good. So there is benefits to going to these ceremonies besides just seeing these wonderful young men. You know, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are wonderful organizations, and these young men and young women, you know, that go through all that and achieve that great honor, you know, it enhances their lives forever. And as I always tell them, if you live by the law, Boy Scout law and the Boy Scout code and the Girl Scouts the same way, you're going to be a fine individual, and I have no concerns about your future because it's quite an organization. So I've done plugging the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Prince Frederick Fire Department had their carnival this week. It was outstanding. I haven't heard any numbers, but they were all very, very, very happy. So I want to thank all the citizens out there that attended the carnival, helped support the fire department. I think people are just looking for a reason to get out after what we've been through for the past year and a half. So they had a great carnival, even though they got rained out on Friday night, or Saturday night, sorry. I think that's probably all I have. Oh, I will add, since we just had a comment, those of you that watch, we met with the Board of Education, or we met with Superintendent Curry 2 weeks ago in our meeting, had a pretty good discussion about the Kerwin Commission and how that's going to impact the future. You know, we extended a invitation that day to sit down and meet to resolve our issues. And to my knowledge, we've not gotten a response to that invitation to sit down and meet to resolve our issues. So that's an issue that we need to fix.
And to be clear, that was my point, that we need a better line of communication, and I was not indicating anybody in particular. Commissioner Nutter is a superhero to me, and I have been on the record of that many times. He has gone out of his way to help me be above and beyond sitting in this chair, but those lines must be better. And to your point of what you just said, Commissioner Hans.
Yep. So, anyway, I'm sorry.
No.
Commissioner Weems, I believe you have a motion.
I do, sir. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session
Pursuant to General Provisions Article Sections 3-305B3 to discuss acquisition of property for a public purpose.
Second?
Have a motion and a second that we go into executive session. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all very much, and you all have a great day.